Ma'am, this is your last warning. Stand up and leave now or you're going to jail.
I am a paying customer. You have no probable cause and you are unlawfully detaining me.
You don't get to argue the law with me.
Then you're about to violate the Constitution on camera and you will regret it.
The woman sitting at table 14 near the window was not causing a disturbance. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't harassing other customers. She was Judge Eleanor Vance, a 62-year-old jurist with a reputation for absolute intellectual rigor and a terrifying memory for case law. She had spent the morning presiding over arraignments for federal felonies, and she was currently enjoying a quiet lunch of grilled salmon and sparkling water. She was dressed in a tailored navy suit, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant bun. To any objective observer, she looked exactly like what she was, a distinguished professional taking a well-earned break. But Officer Braden, 29 years old, and fueled by a toxic mix of arrogance and implicit bias, didn't see a federal judge. He saw a black woman sitting in an upscale bistro in a predominantly white affluent district, and he had already decided she didn't belong there. Braden had been on the force for 6 years. Twice. He was known in the precinct for being proactive, a euphemism that his sergeant used to describe Braden's tendency to escalate minor situations into major constitutional violations. Before we unravel this catastrophic failure of judgment that would cost the city millions and rewrite department policy, I need you to do something. If you believe that no citizen should be harassed simply for existing in a public space, hit that like button right now. It helps us get these stories out to more people. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? This story is going to make your blood boil, and you need to see how it ends. Eleanor Vance had chosen the Gilded Oak because it was quiet. She had a stack of case files on her iPad which she was reviewing while she ate. She was known in the Southern District for her fairness. She was the judge who would toss out evidence if the police obtained it illegally, but she was also the judge who would hand down maximum sentences for violent offenders who preyed on their communities. She believed in the law. She believed in the system even when it was flawed because she believed it could be fixed from the inside. At 12:45 p.m., the restaurant manager, a man named Gregory, had called the non-emergency line. Gregory was nervous and possessed an unfortunate habit of judging customers by their skin color rather than their conduct. He had told the dispatcher there was a woman loitering at a table and refusing to order, despite the fact that Eleanor had already been served and was halfway through her meal. Gregory just wanted the table back for a group of 4 that had just walked in without a reservation. Instead of managing his seating chart, he weaponized the police. Officer Braden arrived 4 minutes later. He didn't park in a designated spot. He pulled his cruiser right up to the curb, blocking the valet lane lights flashing silently. It was a power move. He adjusted his belt, checked his reflection in the glass door, and marched inside. He didn't ask the manager for details. He didn't observe the subject for behavior. He walked straight toward table 14 with his chest puffed out and his hand resting on his taser. Judge Vance saw him coming. She didn't look up immediately. She finished highlighting a paragraph on her screen, took a sip of her water, and only then did she raise her eyes. She had seen thousands of police officers in her courtroom. She knew the difference between an officer who was there to serve and protect and an officer who was there to intimidate. She knew exactly which category Kyle Braden fell into before he even opened his mouth. The bistro was buzzing with the low murmur of lunchtime conversation, the clinking of silverware and the soft jazz playing over the speakers. All of that stopped the moment Officer Braden reached table 14. He didn't offer a greeting. He didn't ask a question. He issued a command. "Ma'am, you need to grab your things and come with me. We're leaving." Eleanor Vance placed her fork down gently on the edge of her plate. She dabbed the corner of her mouth with her linen napkin and folded it on her lap. She looked Braden in the eye, her expression calm, unreadable. "I beg your pardon, officer," she said. Her voice was modulated the same tone she used when overruling a frantic defense attorney. I am in the middle of my lunch. Is there an emergency? Braden scoffed. It was a sound of dismissal loud enough for the tables nearby to hear. The management wants you gone. You're trespassing, so let's not make this a scene. Up. Now. Trespassing. Eleanor repeated the word slowly, testing its weight. Officer, trespassing requires that I remain on private property without permission. I was seated by the hostess. I ordered from the waiter. I have been served my food for which I intend to pay. I am a paying customer conducting lawful business. Under what statute am I trespassing? Braden wasn't used to people quoting statutes. He was used to people getting flustered, scared, or angry. The manager says you're loitering. That means you gotta go. I'm not going to ask you again. I see, Eleanor said. She tapped the screen of her iPad, saving her work. You are acting on a complaint from the manager. Did you verify if the complaint had merit? Did you ask to see my receipt? Did you observe me disrupting the peace? I don't need to observe anything. Braden snapped, his voice rising. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. The owner of this property revoked your permission to be here. That makes it trespassing. If you don't leave voluntarily, you leave in cuffs. Those are your options. The other diners were watching now. A couple at the next table, two elderly women having tea, looked terrified. A businessman across the aisle had his phone out recording. Eleanor noticed the phone. She gave a microscopic nod, acknowledging the witness. Officer, Eleanor said, I am going to finish my meal. Then I will pay my bill. Then I will leave. I have a court session at 2:00 p.m. that I cannot be late for. I suggest you speak to the manager again and clarify why exactly he wants a quiet paying patron removed. Braden's face flushed a deep, angry red. He felt his authority slipping away, eroded by the calm demeanor of this woman who refused to be intimidated. To him, her calmness felt like insolence. You don't tell me what to do, Braden growled. I'm conducting an investigation into a disturbance. There is no disturbance, Eleanor corrected him, except the one you are creating. You are currently detaining me. For a detention to be lawful under Terry v. Ohio, you must have reasonable, articulable suspicion that criminal activity is afoot. Eating salmon is not a crime. Sitting in a restaurant is not a crime. So I will ask you again, what is your reasonable suspicion? Braden's hand tightened on his duty belt. He leaned down, placing both hands on the table, looming over her. You want to play lawyer, fine. We can play lawyer downtown. You're refusing a lawful order. That's obstruction. An order based on an unlawful premise is not a lawful order, Eleanor said, her voice turning steel-hard. And you are perilously close to violating Title 18, Section 242 of the United States Code. Deprivation of rights under color of law. I strongly suggest you take a step back and reassess the situation. Braden laughed. It was a harsh, incredulous sound. Section 242. You memorize that from a TV show, lady. I'm the police. I determine what's lawful here, not you. Stand up. I will not, Eleanor said. Last warning, Braden said, reaching for his handcuffs. Officer, Eleanor said, you are making a mistake that will end your career. I am asking you to call your supervisor. I don't need a supervisor to handle a trespasser, Braden spat. Turn around. The atmosphere in the Gilded Oak had shifted from uncomfortable to suffocating. The air was thick with tension. Every eye in the restaurant was fixed on table 14. The businessman recording the encounter shifted his angle to get a better view of Braden's badge number. Eleanor Vance remained seated. She knew the law better than she knew the layout of her own home. She knew that she had the right to remain in a public accommodation free from discrimination. She knew that the manager's request to remove her was likely based on race, given that she was the only black patron in the establishment and had done nothing to warrant eviction. And she knew that Officer Braden was acting as an unwitting agent of that discrimination, compounding it with his own lack of training and temperament. Officer, Eleanor said, keeping her hands visible on the table. You are escalating a civil dispute into a criminal matter without probable cause. You have not asked for my side of the story. You have not interviewed witnesses. You simply marched in here and demanded I leave. That is the definition of arbitrary and capricious enforcement. I'm done talking, Braden said. He moved around the table. You're under arrest for trespassing and resisting an officer. Resisting requires physical opposition or delay, Eleanor stated clearly. I am verbally asserting my Fourth Amendment rights. Verbal disagreement with a police officer is not a crime. The Supreme Court made that very clear in City of Houston versus Hill. Braden paused. He wasn't a scholar, but he knew that most people didn't cite Supreme Court cases off the cuff. For a fleeting second, a warning bell rang in the back of his mind. Who is this lady? But his ego was too loud, drowning out the caution. He couldn't back down now. If he walked away, he would look weak in front of the manager, in front of the diners, in front of the camera phone pointed at him. I don't care what you think the Supreme Court said, Braden retorted. In this jurisdiction, when I tell you to move, you move. Now are you going to identify yourself, or am I booking you as a Jane Doe? I am happy to identify myself, Eleanor said. But understand that my identification will not justify this stop. It will only confirm the gravity of your error. ID. Now, Braden demanded, holding out his hand. Eleanor moved slowly. I am reaching for my purse on the chair next to me. I am removing my wallet. She narrated her movements, a habit from years of reading police reports where officers claimed a suspect made a furtive movement. She would give him no excuse. She opened her leather wallet. Inside, nestled in a custom cutout, was her identification. But she didn't pull out her driver's license first. She pulled out her Federal Judicial Commission credentials. It was a heavy laminated card with a holographic seal of the United States Courts, her photograph, and the bold text, United States Magistrate Judge. She held it up. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am a federal magistrate for the Southern District. You are currently interfering with a federal judicial officer. Braden took the card. He looked at it. He looked at the seal. He looked at the photo. Any competent officer would have stopped right there. They would have handed the card back, apologized profusely, and exited the restaurant backward. But Braden wasn't competent. He was angry, and he was convinced he was right. His brain couldn't process the information. A federal judge. Here eating lunch alone. It didn't fit his narrative. This looks fake, Braden said. He tossed the card onto the table like it was a playing card. You can buy these online. Nice try. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. That is official government identification. You can verify it by calling the federal marshal's office, or simply dispatch. I'm not calling anyone for a fake ID, Braden sneered. So you're impersonating a judge now too. That's another charge. Keep digging that hole, lady. Officer, the man recording the video spoke up. That looks real to me. You might want to check that. Mind your business or you're next, Braden shouted at the witness, pointing a finger. He turned back to Eleanor. Stand up, hands behind your back. You are refusing to verify my credentials, Eleanor asked, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I'm refusing to play your games. You're under arrest. Braden grabbed her left arm and yanked her upward. The physical contact changed everything. Up until that moment, it had been a verbal altercation, a battle of wits and laws. But the moment Officer Kyle Braden laid his hands on Judge Eleanor Vance, he crossed a line from which there was no return. Eleanor didn't fight him. She allowed herself to be pulled from the chair. She was 62 years old with a bad knee, but she stood as tall as she could. I am not resisting, she announced loudly for the benefit of the camera. I am complying with your physical force. I am asserting that this arrest is unlawful and without probable cause. Stop talking, Braden barked. He spun her around roughly. He pulled her arms behind her back, twisting her shoulders at an angle that caused a sharp intake of breath. You are hurting me. Eleanor said calmly. "There is no need for this level of force. I am compliant." "Stop tensing up then," Braden lied. She wasn't tensing. He was just being rough because he wanted to dominate the situation. He pulled the handcuffs from his belt. The metallic ratchet, ratchet, ratchet sound of the cuffs tightening echoed in the silent restaurant. He cuffed her tight. Too tight. "Check for spacing," Eleanor said. "You are required to ensure there is space for a finger between the cuff and the wrist." "They're fine," Braden said, dismissing her. He didn't check. He grabbed her by the bicep, his fingers digging into the fabric of her suit jacket. "Let's go." As he marched her toward the door, the restaurant manager, Gregory, stood by the host stand. He looked pale. He had wanted the loiterer gone, but he hadn't expected handcuffs. He hadn't expected a federal judge. He saw the way the other customers were looking at him with disgust. "Is this necessary?" Gregory whispered as they passed. "She wouldn't listen," Braden said loudly, acting the hero. "I handled it." Eleanor stopped briefly as they passed the man with the phone. She looked directly into the lens. "My name is Judge Eleanor Vance. I am being arrested by Officer Braden of the Metro Police Department. Please keep that video safe." "I got you, Judge," the man said. "It's already uploading to the cloud." Braden shoved her forward. "Move." They exited the restaurant into the bright afternoon sun. The valet attendants stared. People walking their dogs stopped to watch. It was the ultimate humiliation, a woman who had spent her life upholding the law now being paraded like a common criminal because a young officer couldn't check his ego or his bias. Braden opened the back door of his cruiser. It was a cage. The seat was hard plastic, designed to be hosed down. It smelled of stale sweat and disinfectant. "Watch your head," Braden said, not actually helping her. Eleanor had to maneuver awkwardly to get inside with her hands cuffed behind her back. It was painful. Her knee throbbed. Braden slammed the door. He walked around to the driver's seat, feeling a rush of adrenaline. He felt powerful. He had taken control. He had removed the problem. He picked up his radio. "Dispatch Unit 4 Alpha. One female in custody, transporting to central booking. Charges trespassing, resisting disorderly conduct, impersonating an official." "Copy 4 Alpha," the dispatcher replied. Braden glanced in the rearview mirror. Eleanor was sitting perfectly straight, her eyes closed, her breathing controlled. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was meditating on the steps she would take to dismantle this department. Braden laughed to himself. "Hope you enjoyed your lunch," he taunted. Eleanor opened her eyes. They were cold, hard flint. "I hope you have a good lawyer, Officer Braden. You are going to need one." Yeah. Tell it to the judge," Braden said, laughing at his own joke. "I am the judge," Eleanor replied. And then she fell silent. The drive to the precinct took 15 minutes. To Officer Braden, it was a victory lap. To Judge Vance, it was an eternity of discomfort and seething, focused resolve. The handcuffs were digging into the soft tissue of her wrists. Her shoulders ached, but she refused to slump. She refused to look defeated. She mentally cataloged every bump in the road, every reckless lane change Braden made, every comment he muttered under his breath. When they arrived at the precinct, Braden pulled into the sally port. The heavy garage door rumbled shut behind them, sealing them in the concrete intake area. He hauled Eleanor out of the car. "Let's go. Walk," he commanded. He led her through the heavy steel doors into the processing area. It was a chaotic room filled with officers' clerks and a few other arrestees handcuffed to benches. The air smelled of ink and industrial cleaner. The intake sergeant was a man named Thomas Miller. Miller was 55, a 30-year veteran who was counting the days to retirement. He had seen it all. He was sitting behind the high desk sipping coffee when Braden marched Eleanor up to the counter. "What do we have here, Kyle?" Sergeant Miller asked, looking tired. "Trespassing at the Gilded Oak," Braden announced proudly. "Refused to leave, resisted, claimed she was some kind of judge, handed me a fake ID. Miller looked at Eleanor. He squinted. Then his eyes went wide. He put his coffee cup down, slowly. He knew Eleanor Vance. He had testified in her courtroom 3 months ago on a drug trafficking case. He had seen the way she commanded the bench. He had seen the respect the prosecutors and defense attorneys gave her. "Kyle," Miller said, his voice trembling slightly. "Uncuff her." "What?" Braden blinked. "Sarge, she's non-compliant. I haven't processed her yet." "I said take the cuffs off. Right. Now." Miller stood up. He walked around the desk. "Sarge, she's a suspect. She tried to pass a fake Fed ID." "That is not a fake ID, you moron," Miller roared. The entire booking room went silent. "That is Magistrate Judge Eleanor Vance. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Braden froze. The color drained from his face. He looked from Miller to Eleanor. Eleanor stood there, wrists bound, gazing at Braden with an expression of absolute pity. "He refused to verify my credentials, Sergeant," Eleanor said calmly. "He refused to call a supervisor. He used excessive force during the arrest. My wrists are injured." Miller pulled the keys from Braden's belt. His hands were shaking as he unlocked the cuffs. "Judge Vance, I am so sorry. I don't know what I have no words." The cuffs clicked open. Eleanor brought her hands forward. Her wrists were bruised, deep red marks encircling the dark skin. She rubbed them slowly. "Thank you, Sergeant Miller," she said. "I would like to speak to the watch commander and the chief immediately." "Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am." Miller turned to Braden. "Give me your gun and your badge. Go sit in the break room. Don't speak to anyone. Don't touch your phone. You are done." "But—" Braden started, his voice a squeak. "Now!" Miller screamed. Braden placed his weapon and badge on the counter. He looked like a child who had broken a priceless vase. He walked away. His shoulders slumped as the reality of his situation began to crash down on him. The atmosphere in the precinct transformed instantly. It went from a routine afternoon to a 5-alarm fire. Officers who were joking around a moment ago were now scrambling to look busy or disappear. Nobody wanted to be anywhere near the fallout of arresting a federal judge. Sergeant Miller escorted Eleanor to the captain's office. He offered her a chair, water, and ice pack for her wrists. "I'm fine, Sergeant," Eleanor said, declining the ice. "I want the evidence preserved. That is my priority." "It's being done, Judge. I've already locked down the Bodycam footage from the server so it can't be deleted or edited. I've pulled the dispatch logs." Captain Robert Henderson burst into the office 5 minutes later. He was breathless. He had been at a Rotary Club luncheon when he got the call. "Judge Vance," Henderson said, extending a hand that Eleanor did not shake. "Judge, I am mortified. There has been a terrible misunderstanding." "It was not a misunderstanding, Captain," Eleanor said, her voice filling the room. "It was a violation of my civil rights. It was an unlawful arrest based on racial profiling. Your officer saw a black woman in a nice restaurant and decided she didn't belong. He ignored the law. He ignored my identification. He ignored common sense." "We are going to launch a full internal investigation," Henderson promised. "Officer Braden has been relieved of duty pending the outcome." "That is the bare minimum," Eleanor said. "I want the dash cam footage. I want the body cam footage. I want the 911 call from the restaurant manager. I want Officer Braden's disciplinary file, and I want to know why a man with his temperament was allowed to carry a badge in the first place." "You'll have full cooperation, Judge. Please let us drive you home, or back to your car." "My car is at the restaurant," Eleanor said. "I assume it has been towed." Henderson winced. I will check." "If it has been towed," Eleanor said, "you will retrieve it. You will pay for it, and you will have it delivered to my residence." "Absolutely." Eleanor stood up. "I am going to leave now, Captain. I am going to go home. I am going to ice my wrists, and then I am going to call my attorney. By tomorrow morning, the Southern District will be filing a formal complaint. This isn't just about me. If he did this to a federal judge, imagine what he has been doing to people who don't have my power, people who can't fight back." "I understand," Henderson said. He looked defeated. He knew the department was about to be turned upside down. The next morning, the story didn't just break. It exploded. The video from the restaurant had gone viral overnight. It showed clearly, undeniably, the calm demeanor of Judge Vance and the aggressive bullying tactics of Officer Braden. The internet was on fire. Judge Vance was trending #1 globally. The mayor called a press conference at 10:00 a.m. He stood next to the police chief, both of them looking somber. They apologized to Judge Vance. They apologized to the community. They announced the immediate termination of Officer Kyle Braden. They thought that would be enough to stop the bleeding. It wasn't. Judge Vance filed her lawsuit at 11:00 a.m. It was a masterpiece of legal writing. It didn't just sue Braden, it sued the city for failure to train, failure to supervise, and for maintaining a culture of impunity. It cited Braden's previous complaints, 4 of them in 3 years, all involving minority citizens, all dismissed by Internal Affairs as unfounded. They ignored the warning signs, Eleanor told a reporter from the Times in an exclusive interview. They taught him that his badge was a shield against accountability. Well, that shield is broken. The Department of Justice, prompted by the high profile of the victim, announced a pattern or practice investigation into the police department. They weren't just looking at Braden anymore. They were looking at everyone. Every stop, every search, every arrest. The restaurant. The Gilded Oak was not spared. The manager, Gregory, was fired within 24 hours. The owners issued a public apology and pledged to donate a percentage of their profits to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. But the damage was done. Protesters lined the sidewalk outside the bistro for weeks. They held signs that read, "Dining while black is not a crime." Officer Braden, now former Officer Braden, sat in his apartment with the blinds drawn. He had lost his job. He had lost his pension. He was facing criminal charges for assault and deprivation of rights. His union representative had told him bluntly, "We can't defend this, Kyle. You arrested a federal magistrate. You're on your own." He watched the news. He saw the video of himself. For the first time, stripped of his uniform and his power, he looked at his actions from the outside. He saw the bully. He saw the racism. He saw the stupidity. 6 months later, the city settled with Judge Eleanor Vance for $1.2 million. It was one of the largest settlements for a single arrest in the city's history. Eleanor didn't keep a dime. She created the Vance Legal Defense Initiative, a scholarship fund for young minority law students, and a grant program for legal aid clinics that represented victims of police misconduct. "I don't need the city's money," she said at the press conference announcing the foundation. "I have a good job. I have a pension. This money belongs to the people who were stopped by officers like Kyle Braden and didn't have a voice. It belongs to the people who were forced to plead guilty to crimes they didn't commit because they couldn't afford bail. It belongs to the community." The police department underwent a radical transformation. Under the federal consent decree, they implemented mandatory body cameras with strict penalties for turning them off. They revised their use of force policies. They created a civilian oversight board with the power to subpoena officers. Judge Vance returned to the bench. But she was different. She was even more rigorous. When officers testified in her courtroom, she grilled them. She demanded specifics. She watched Bodycam footage with a hawk's eye. She became a guardian of the Fourth Amendment, not just in theory, but in practice. The incident at the Gilded Oak became a case study in law schools and police academies across the country. It was titled The Vance Effect. It taught a simple lesson. No one is above the law and no one is beneath its protection. As for Kyle Braden, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor deprivation of rights charge to avoid federal prison time. He received 3 years of probation and is permanently barred from working in law enforcement. He works in a warehouse now loading boxes. Every day he answers to a supervisor who demands respect. He has learned the hard way what it feels like to be powerless. This story matters because it exposes the fragility of our rights. Judge Vance was protected because she had a title, a badge of her own, and the knowledge to fight back. But what if she had been a nurse, a teacher, a grandmother just trying to enjoy a meal? Would the outcome have been the same? That is the question that should keep us all up at night. Justice shouldn't depend on who you are or who you know. It should be blind. But as we saw sometimes, justice has to take off the blindfold and stare down the barrel of a camera lens to get the truth. Thank you for reading this story. It's a heavy one, but it's real. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the power dynamics in our society, please drop a comment below. Have you ever been judged based on your appearance? How would you have reacted if you were in Judge Vance's shoes? And please subscribe to the channel. We are committed to telling the stories of justice, accountability, and the fight for a fairer world. Your support helps us keep the lights on and the truth loud. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and know your rights.